I received a comment on one of my previous videos saying, "Who let you out of the kitchen?" The video that I made, it was about stimulus package that Donald Trump is promising that he is going to issue a $2,000 or minimum $2,000 stimulus check for every individual, the money that he's driving or he's receiving from tariffs. And I just laughed at that comment. I said, I know more by being in the kitchen than your president does by being in Oval Office. And I mean it when I say that. This guy is delusional. Um, he's not my president. I didn't vote for him. He might be your president. So you can protect him all you want, but at least be honest to yourself and be honest to your children what he's doing to the society. I'm just going to give you an update on what's happening with $2,000 stimulus check. Of course, he made another announcement that he is going to give $2,000 stimulus check coming out of tariff income that he received. And he said a minimum is going to be 2,000, which means it could be higher than $2,000. It could be 2,500, 2,200. I guess it depends on what they decide eventually. We still have a month of December left to collect tariff income, which means I'm not sure if they're going to have enough money to give $2,000 stimulus check. If you were expecting a check to come out towards the end of the year before December 31st, then forget about it because there's no way that they can make that possible. If you're expecting the check to come by in the early 2026, like for example in January, they probably would want to do this because usually the case the lawsuit that's going on against Donald Trump and his tariff, whether the tariffs are legal or illegal, the court will decide most likely probably by end of March or April because it usually takes about 6 months to go through the proceedings and make a decision. So in my humble opinion, Donald Trump is going to issue a check before the court order comes out because he would want to then say, oops, spent the money. You have to give me a break while he's going his way to jail, which he would overwrite anyway. And I think this is what pisses people off because they don't think that he's doing it for that reason. That's exactly what he's doing for. And the other thing I want to make very clear, he says, well, tariff are going to are going to help us a lot, and this is going to be a major part of the economy. What he doesn't understand, I'm not sure if he even has an economist analyst or a group of economists who actually help him understand how economies work and how tariffs work. And maybe if they do and he just doesn't listen to them, or maybe they don't give him an advice because, maybe it's somehow serves them better this way. But anyways, being an economist, I would like to make something very clear to you that when the tariffs are applied on imports, just remember one thing. The countries who are selling us the products are not paying the tariff money. The people who are buying those products, for example, if you buy automobile parts, those car companies are paying the amount that has been added, which is like a tax that they have to pay in form of tariff. So the consumer who are buying the products are going to be paying the tariff, not the selling countries. Now, somebody will ask the question, well, if those countries are not paying the money, then why are they fighting Donald Trump? And I'll explain you why. Because once you impose tariffs on those nations, on their exports, they're going to bump up their prices by as much as the tariff is being imposed on their products. Ultimately, when our retailers go and buy those products, or our companies go and buy those products from China, Mexico, Canada, whatever, they're obviously going to be paying high price for those products. And then ultimately they have to bump up their price, which ultimately comes back to you and I, like common taxpayers of United States of America. We have to pay the higher price on those products and services that we are receiving, which have been affected by tariffs. So ultimately, us, the taxpayers, have to take on the burden. And that's why if you have not noticed, every time you go to grocery store every month, the prices are jacked up. You probably buy the same amount of stuff every month, but your bill is like 30 bucks, 40 bucks, 50 bucks higher than it was last month on buying the same groceries. And that's what's happening. Now, the other countries, the question was, why would the other countries care if they're not paying this money? The other countries would care because once the prices go higher, then obviously the demands of the products go down, which means they're not able to sell as many products as they usually do, which reduces their profit margin. And this chain just goes around all the way down to common people like you and I. Means once the prices are higher, we buy less products. We try to consume less food because now the meat is expensive, the groceries are expensive. For those who can afford it, it probably doesn't matter to them, but there are lots of people who are living at poverty line or below poverty line, or they're like middle class or lower middle class, and they have so many other expenses that they're worried about, so they may have to cut down on lots of expenses that they're bearing right now in the form of food, clothes, shoes, all those things. So ultimately it affects everyone in that cycle, and that's why those countries are fighting with Donald Trump on those tariffs that he's imposing. So we're not getting any income from tariff. If anything, our economy is getting ruined for tariffs. I absolutely am against tariff, and you should be too if you understand how this economic cycle works. But anyways, the long story short is, regardless whether he agrees or not, whether you agree or not, but I'm going to give you exactly what it means economically and how the definition of tariff is and how the tariffs work, so you understand what Donald Trump is saying is just a hoax and it's just a made up stuff, and he's trying to make himself look good. It's not helping you and I, or anybody for that matter, when it comes to tariffs. Not only that, the other problem is he has US government has in general, I'm not just talking about Donald Trump in this case, all these politicians have always done this. They have gotten themselves stuck into an issue without even having a backup plan. So if you're imposing tariffs on China, for instance, we know we get a large amount of products coming from China to have lots of products built in this country, because the spare parts are built on those countries, and China particularly. Other stuff that we import from there to boost our economy and to produce the things that we're producing, or manufacture the things that we're manufacturing in this country, they totally depend on China's products. Now, we have no infrastructure, we have no factories to manufacture any of those, and it will take us good 5 to 10 years before we actually are able to manufacture all those goods that we import from that country. But yet we have gotten ourselves into a war which we cannot afford. Now, that's the update on $2,000 stimulus check. He did promise that he's going to issue those. I think it's going to happen in the next year, in the first part of the year 2026, between January, February, before April, most likely. So let's see if I'm right or wrong, but I think he's going to issue that because he doesn't want to return that money back in case court rules against his tariffs policy. And they ruled that these tariffs were illegal to begin with. Now let's talk about stock market. For the past 4 trading sessions or 5 trading sessions, market has been bleeding red. And my friend, lots of the people who actually do watch my videos, they've been asking me, why is the market red? Can you record a video on this? Yes, absolutely. I think the main problem that we are facing right now is liquidity crisis, which means people were using margins, and it's a good time to kind of get out of debts, get out of the margin calls, pay off those debts, and people are trying to sell those equities that they were holding in order for them to collect some cash so they can pay off their debts, which is in the short term, obviously, it's creating lots of buy the dip opportunity. And if you were wise enough and smart enough and you had some dry powder sitting on the side, this was a perfect buy the dip opportunity that was created for people who were looking to buy into some of the stocks that they have been waiting to buy in. Also, I think the big tech and the tech stock and quantum stocks and Meg 7 and all those are down because everybody is waiting on NVDA earning call, which is taking place tomorrow, Wednesday, after the closing bell. And I think everybody has very high expectation of NVIDIA as always, which I'm almost 100% confident that they're going to beat the expectations of the Wall Street. And once the earning call is out, I think that's going to have Mega 7, the tech stocks kind of go higher because people would then be more confident to invest into those tech stocks, thinking that this category is still safe to play. the other stocks like small cap, mid cap stocks are dropping. As I said, there's liquidity crisis. So there's actually not a bad idea to free up some cash, pay off debts. While the equities were pretty high, they've been going parabolic, and those small pullbacks are healthy. I absolutely don't agree that it's a correction. I know there are lots of people in the stock market who are fear mongering, saying that we are in recession or we're hitting recession. If you watch my videos, you know that I am of the opinion that we're not in recession. We're going to have soft landing, and we are already have been through recession, and people probably don't realize it, that the recession already hit us and we're out of recession now. But even then, retailers they don't care. They're just buying every dip that they can. Only 30% of the people think that we are hitting recession. About the rest, some think that we're going to have soft landing, and other think that we're going to have no landing at all. But even if it's soft landing or no landing, that's still good versus just having a hard landing, because in my opinion, hard landing would be bad, because that will panic the market and that will cause a bloodbath in the market. Now, I also read a news this morning, like an article, I'm not sure if it was this morning or yesterday, which talked about there's a shortage of housing in the US, and that kind of made me excited, because when housing market goes higher, yes, it does cause inflation, but it also shows that economy needs to have more homes built in the country, which is going to have lots of impact on different aspects of the goods and services that are manufactured in this country. Because when houses are built, more houses are built and more construction is done, so many other areas of manufacturing does well. For example, Home Depot, we know what happened to Home Depot. The stock has collapsed because of the stuff that took place. If you guys don't know, I can make a separate video, or you can just read the news. That will help Home Depot to do well. It will also increase the plumbing material, the electric material, and all those things. The demand will go higher, and overall the economy does well when there's a shortage of housing and when new constructions take place in a country. So also it will make you happy if you are a real estate investor. That means that the prices of your real estate will go higher as well, because if there's a shortage of housing, that means your rental property will do well, because you can jack up the rent since there's enough rental available to the consumers. Also, if you if you're selling properties, you can put a higher price, because there will be more buyers in the market to buy your properties. Now, with the interest rates dropping, again, let's go back to what Jerome Powell is going to do on December 9th. We're approaching the next date if the rates are going to be cut. I'm of the opinion that Jerome Powell will do 25 basis point rate cut, and I think that is going to help the banking industry, the housing market, because with the housing shortage and interest rates going down, there will be more sellers and more buyers in the market. It will bump up the inflation a little bit, because housing and shelter is a big aspect of inflation report that we get. But overall, it will help the economy do well. Now let's talk about what happened to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is, lots of people consider Bitcoin as risk-on asset. They don't consider it as a store of value. You know me, if you watch this channel, that I am of the opinion that Bitcoin is a store of value. However, there's a risk in this, because there is a large institutions which are called the crypto whales, so to speak. They hold a large chunk of these cryptocurrencies, and particularly Bitcoin. And we know there's only limited supply of Bitcoin that's ever going to exist in the economy. And few institutions or few whales who hold a large chunk of Bitcoin kind of makes investors nervous. I know I am nervous, because if MicroStrategy dumps suddenly, it's going to crash Bitcoin. Now, the other thing is the Bitcoin is not regulated. It's lots of, for past 15 years, ever since the cryptocurrency has been launched, in politicians and courts, they can't even come to the term whether it's gold-like item, whether it's asset like real estate, whether it's equity like item, like your stocks and bonds, they can't even come to that, let alone regulating the Bitcoin. Obviously, it's kind of impossible. Plus, I'm totally against regulating Bitcoin because that's the whole purpose of Bitcoin. So it's a free economy, free market. Right now, I cannot spend my own money because somebody is always watching me. If I have to transfer money from here to my family, it goes through so many different banks and everybody gets their cut, whereas Bitcoin is instant and quick. For example, in Gaza, lots of people were transferring, uh, the money was not allowed to go there because banks were not funding the funds that they were receiving as a help to Gazan. But there are people, Bitcoin literally saved lives in Gaza. Some people who held Bitcoin, they transferred Bitcoin to those countries where people had direct access to it, and they were able to use that money to buy products and services for their everyday use and to save people's lives. So that's why I'm totally against having cryptocurrencies. Well, not every cryptocurrency, but particularly Bitcoin being some kind of regulated, because that just defeats the whole purpose of it. But anyways, back to the story why the Bitcoin is dropping. So the Bitcoin is dropping because lots of people think it's a risk on asset, not a store of value. So other people also, people get nervous when only those big whales, the crypto whales, are holding a large amount of Bitcoin, because they're nervous that if they dump even a little bit, or if they talk about dumping a little bit, it's going to crash. People just try to get out of it. People don't want to use Bitcoin as a hedge against risk because they already consider it a risky asset. So when there's a risk in the market, there's a fear in the market, people, the first thing they get out of is the crypto currencies, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Shiba, all that. Dogecoin, if they still exist, I don't invest in those. So the first thing they do is they sell out of those, and then they move other equities. They sell out of those gradually, and they hold cash, or maybe buy bonds, or maybe invest in real estate, depending on what their strategy is like. The other reason why Bitcoin is falling, because we also know that there's some kind of regulation that these fund managers have put on and ETF managers have put on, because there's only certain amount of Bitcoin that you can sell on daily basis, which one would argue, but that gives me some security. Not necessarily, it's quite the contrary, because what happens is you could see your portfolio bleed, but you're not able to sell. The reason being is that those whales may have already dumped first thing in the morning, and they have already met the daily threshold of how much you can sell on daily basis. And now you're just sitting there seeing your portfolio bleed, but you cannot sell because all the threshold is already met by these, big suits, or Bitcoin whales. So it's kind of adds more risk to Bitcoin investors, and that's why it's dropping. It dropped below $90,000 today, but then there was some buy the dip opportunity. Now somebody would ask a question: so what's the strategy to invest into cryptocurrency? If you watch my channel regularly, I don't endorse all the other cryptocurrencies, because I feel like those are stable coins and not Bitcoin. Stable coins function very differently. They were designed to make those rich who actually introduced it. Bitcoin, on the other hand, I feel like is like digital gold. It's gold-like asset. It's more like sound money. So how would you buy it? I would say you can you can trade it just like your equities if you have a discipline. So for example, you should have a small percentage allocated for Bitcoin, 2%, 3%, 10%, depending on how much money you have. You should not have more than that. So if Bitcoin does drop, at least your entire portfolio isn't suffering. Number two, you can do dollar cost average. So regardless of what the price is, whether it goes up or down, you just keep buying. For example, every paycheck, let's say you put $1,000 towards Bitcoin, you just keep doing this, and that will accumulate over the year, and it will be more beneficial to you in the long run. Third, you should not trade it. You should hold it. It should be like your store of value. I know lots of you will not agree with this, but trust me, I have made a whole detailed video on this. If you have not watched it, please look at Banking, Currency, and Finance series of videos that I recorded, and I made a detailed video about Bitcoin and how it's going to be a store of value in the long run. So Again, so my opinion of this opinion is that it's not a risk-on asset. In the short term, yes, it's volatile. It could be risk-on, as I said, with the ETF managers being able to buy now and hedge funds being able to buy now. That's the first thing they dump once they have some kind of fear, economic fear, or a global fear, or some kind of stock market fear. Every news obviously affects the stock market. But if you are disciplined enough and you can just dollar cost average every month or every week, you can, let's say, put $500 towards Bitcoin or 5,000 Bitcoin, depending on what your budget is. In the long run, it'll be more beneficial to you. A friend of mine has been asking me to just buy one Bitcoin, and I told her no, it has gone up so much in price. And look, I'm so glad I didn't buy it. Since she told me to buy it and I refused, she was like, "You're going to regret this a year from now." And I said, maybe, but I would also regret if I bought it now, because I have a feeling it's gonna go down. And it has gone down 30% since, and I'm glad that I didn't buy it. The other reason why I was so nervous, because MicroStrategy has bought majority of the Bitcoin that exists in the market right now, and it kind of makes me nervous, because if they, and that guy, I don't trust him. The way he looks, the way he talks, I feel like he's pumping it so much. I have faith in Bitcoin, but in the short term, I feel like he's accumulating it, and one bad morning, it's probably going to be a good morning for him, but bad morning for retailers. He's going to wake up and he's going to dump a chunk of Bitcoin, and then all these retailers and other people who hold less of Bitcoin are going to be left holding a bag. So therefore, I don't want to buy it at the price that it was 2 weeks ago, which was like $124,000. They're above $124,000. Even now, I think it's too expensive for me. I will wait for it to drop further, which it has a pretty good chance of dropping further, if you ask me. But in the short term, Ethereum would be a good option to purchase. And why I say that? There are two reasons. One is cheaper than Bitcoin. It was at $4,000 at one point. Now it's floating below $3,000. The other reason is with Tom Lee endorsing Ethereum, I think in the short term, it has a very good chance of growing much faster, because the hype and momentum is there. And it's nothing wrong with trading the hype. Me personally, I would not be buying Ethereum. I don't buy any other coin except for Bitcoin if I was to ever invest into cryptocurrency. And the reason being is I don't think religiously that's permissible for me to invest into any of the other coins if it's not for Bitcoin. But again, that's just my personal opinion. Other Muslims may have different opinion for that, because again, Ethereum and Shiba and Dogecoin, I don't think they meet the criteria of sound money. So I will stay away from them, because to me that will be a real gambling in that at that point, and gambling is not allowed in my faith. So, but if you're not Muslim and if you don't care, you can just go ahead and buy Ethereum. I think in the short term, we will have a better return in Ethereum than Bitcoin, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but I think that's what it's going to be. Now let's talk about what to do next. So I think this has been a buy the dip opportunity, what we have seen in the market for past 4 days. I did buy into some of the stocks. I dollar cost average some of my stocks that were, I bought at higher price. And I think going into towards the end of the week and next week, tomorrow is NVIDIA's earning. If NVIDIA does well, I think market should rally. If investors and stock market analysts like their outlook and what their earning call says, obviously everything revolves around what they speak about. So if tomorrow's earning call goes well, I think the next 2 days towards the end of the week, market should go higher. Tech stocks will do well. Bitcoin, I'm not sure, because I think people are still a little skeptical, being that they're not sure if we're going to hit recession or not. I personally think we're not going to hit recession, but there are lots of people who are nervous about it. And then after that, obviously, we're looking towards the December 9th FOMC meeting and see if Jerome Powell will cut the rate. The other thing we're looking at, if he cuts the rate, that's going to give market the new enthusiasm going towards the end of the year, and we will see a Santa Claus rally if everything else goes smooth. So that was the update. I hope this video helps. Please give my video a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Please be very careful how you invest into the market. Don't take any of my words as a personalized financial advice. You know your financial situation better, so make decisions accordingly. Please go out and make some money. Until next one, take care.